What's good, Commanders fans, and happy Thanksgiving once again. Happy Black Friday. And it is a Black Friday for Jack Del Rio. I wanted it to be a Black Friday for Ron Rivera as well, and Del Rio. And, you know, basically both those guys, I wanted them to be fired today. But we get one guy that definitely deserved to go. Last night, it was terrible. Guys were running wide open. And Dak missed a couple guys. He missed Jake Ferguson, who was wide open down the middle. He missed Jalen Tolbert, who was wide open down the middle, and Ben St. Juste. He missed a couple passes in the beginning of the game that should have been completions on Ben St. Juste, and they finally started completing some down the field to Brandon Cooks, to Kevontae Turpin, screen pass to Rico Dowdle. You know, before halftime, they just made an easy drive down the field to score with about, what was like 1 minute left in the game after we kicked the field goal. 1 minute before halftime, before we kicked the field goal. So Jack Del Rio's defense has been dust up, MAGA Jack. His defense has been awful. It's been terrible. And the only really good year that he had was that 2020 season where we played a bunch of backup quarterbacks. We played like Nick Mullins. Who else we played? We played Andy Dalton for the Cowboys. We played Nate Sudfeld in the second half of the last game of the season. Like, we played a lot of we played Carson Wentz the first game of the season. That 2020 season when we made the playoffs, when Carson Wentz was just awful. We sacked him 8 times. We played a couple bad quarterbacks, and we were, even in that season, we were 7-9. I mean, the playoffs. But other than that, Jack's been pretty darn awful. You look at our numbers right now. I think we're dead last in points allowed. We're 32nd in team opponents points per game. We're giving up 29 points a game at this point. We're 30th in passing defense, giving up 264 yards per game. And this is where I think Jack really lost it, honestly. And I have the quote from Isaiah Hodgins last week, who said, "We just kept playing man, we kept playing man, we kept playing man." It's hard to have your players keep playing man all game. They just start cooking them. You know, you let Danny or Tommy DeVito cook you. You let Daniel Jones cook. Jack Del Rio he always got cooked by Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Justin Fields on what was it, Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football or Thursday Night Football, when DJ Moore almost had 300 yards receiving. A.J. Brown had 178 yards receiving. He kept putting Emmanuel Forbes on A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown said the same thing. Like, they gave a lot of respect to Emmanuel Forbes, and I think that was a big downfall of Jack Del Rio right there too. But you look at some of the games, man, where every quarterback who plays us or every receiver who plays us, they get big yardage, man. And the opponent after the game, they always say, "Oh, you know, the defense was very easy to beat, nothing difficult, nothing complex," all the time, man, all the time. So it was time for Jack to go. You know, 32nd, and there's some other stats in the article too. Del Rio's first 3 seasons with Washington, the defense was inconsistent. In 2020, the Commanders finished 4th in points allowed and 2nd in yards allowed, but followed the next season by ranking 25th in points and 22nd in yards allowed. And alleged, there was a scuffle between Jack Del Rio and Eric Bieniemy last night. Now, my colleague on the Locked On Sports Network, David Harrison, the Locked On Commanders, he asked Ron Rivera about it. And Ron Rivera said no comment. So apparently there was a scuffle between Jack Del Rio and Eric Bieniemy last night. That might have been the final straw right there, where Ron was like, "That's it. You give up 45 points to the Cowboys," where they're eating drumsticks before the game is even over, before at the start of the fourth quarter, they started eating drumsticks and turkey legs and stuff like that, and celebrating and going crazy. But yeah, Jack, it was time for him to go. And just too much talent on that defensive line. He did not get the best out of this talent. Now, John Allen had a good year last year. Deron Payne had a good year last year. But I feel like Chase Young never reached his potential. Same thing with Montez Sweat. That D-line should have been eaten. Too many times we were conservative against Justin Fields, letting him sit there and pick us apart. Same thing with Josh Allen, that Bills game. We just let him sit there and pick us apart. So too many times he was just not aggressive and getting to the quarterback at all. So that was a big downfall with Jack Del Rio. And then also the Seahawks game too. I'm just pinpointing games and scenarios where we score. Sam Howell has a great drive to score. We really had a good chance to beat the Seahawks. And guess what? The Seahawks get the ball back with 52 seconds left. Not even a minute left, but 52 seconds left. And I was like, they're going to win that game. And guess what? Geno Smith walked us down. DK Metcalf wide open a couple of times, and they went down and scored a touchdown. Because I knew how bad this defense is, and I know how Jack Del Rio, his defense is awful. They give up big yards all the time. They give up a big play, and a lot of that is on Jack Del Rio. So it certainly was time for him to go. And they fired his assistant, too, the defensive backs coach who replaced Chris Harris. And somebody actually pointed out that this guy was also, he was just he came out of high school. Brent Wieselmeyer enters, this is the write-up on Brent Wieselmeyer, his bio. He enters his 6th season coaching in the NFL and his 4th with Washington and is the team's defensive backs coach. Prior to joining Washington, Wieselmeyer was the head coach of Santa Margarita Catholic High School. Prior to coaching at Santa Margarita, he was an assistant. He was an offensive analyst for the University of Kansas in 2018. So I think that was a bad replacement hire for Chris Harris, who did a good job with the DBs. Apparently, this guy heard through the grapevine that Brent Wieselmeyer is a good friend of Jack Del Rio. So that's basically the only reason why Brent Wieselmeyer was hired in the first place, to replace Chris Harris. So they didn't do a good job replacing him, and they lost Chris Harris to the Titans, and that was a big loss, man. The DBs just have not looked the same. Now, I'm not giving the DBs excuses, but they have not looked good under Brent Wieselmeyer at all this year. Ben St. Juste looked awful. Mayor Force not look good. And basically, the only person that's looked decent is Kendall Fuller, and that's about it. All right, so it's interesting because we got two statements here on Twitter from the Washington Commanders. One first was from Ron Rivera. The second was from Josh Harris. So of course it's up in the air. You're kind of like, okay, who made the decision really? Was it Josh Harris that made the decision, or was it Ron Rivera that told to Josh Harris? It was like, hey, we're gonna fire that Jack Del Rio. But I think honestly, the outside noise may have gotten to Josh Harris, where he's like, hey, something had to be done, man. You just cannot sit on your hands. And everybody's like, oh, wait till the end of the season. Wait till the no. You have to have pride and integrity and stand on business and stand on morals. You cannot let mediocrity and stink and stench sit around and stand around on the sidelines when you lose 45-10. When you lose to the Giants with Tommy DeVito, a third-string practice squad quarterback who's living in his mom's house, comes in and scores 2 touchdowns and throws for 200-something yards and wins the game in your house in FedEx Field. That's unacceptable. Honestly, somebody has to be fired. There has to be consequences for mediocrity, and you cannot let that sit around. So they had to make something happen. Yeah, defense is dead last in the league in points allowed. It's just ridiculous. It's just, and Wieselmeyer, that's just, he wasn't qualified. Let's just keep it real. Offensive analyst and coming out of high school. No disrespect to high school coaches for sure. There's some really good high school coaches that work their way up to college and then to the NFL ranks. But this guy Wieselmeyer, it just sounded like he just hired a friend of a friend, basically his friend, to be the DB's coach. Josh, this is a statement from Ron Rivera. Today I relieved Jack Del Rio and Brent Wieselmeyer of their duties. I appreciate it. And then remember when Jack Del Rio kept tweeting out D's nuts and replying to people on Twitter and getting duped by burner accounts and saying D's nuts, and he thought it was so funny. And then he finally had to deactivate his account. Those were one of the best moments of Jack Del Rio's tenure as the head coach. But Jack Del Rio, he used to say some funny stuff. He did in the press conference when he defended Emmanuel Forbes and said that somebody sitting in air conditioning made the decision to eject him from the Seahawks game. That was a funny moment. So Jack did say some funny things. I remember him, kind of going in on Jamin Davis. He did go in on Emmanuel Forbes. So there was a lot of times where Jack did call out players for sure in press conferences. But I could definitely see him going back. I could kind of see a rift with him and Eric Bieniemy. But it's interesting because Eric coaches offense, Jack coaches the defense. So I don't know what was going on when the defense actually was playing a little bit well for spurts in the second half where they were getting stops, but we would get the football. We would do a silly pass on 3rd and 1, not get the first down on 4th and 1. Eric Bieniemy did that like 2 times in a row. It felt like yesterday. So this is the statement from Ron Rivera. He says, today I relieved Jack Del Rio and Brent Wieselmeyer of their duties. I appreciate all that they contribute to the organization over the past 4 seasons and wish them all the best moving forward. That's from head coach Ron Rivera. And then this one is from Josh Harris. Now, this is a long statement. Statement from Josh Harris, manager and partner of the Washington Commanders. This morning, I spoke with Coach Rivera, and he recommended that the team make changes at defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach. I accepted those recommendations and want to thank Jack and Brent for their contributions to the Commanders. We wish them and their families moving forward. I feel exactly how our fans feel today, disappointed and frustrated. It's how our players and staff feel as well. I knew our first season of ownership would include challenges along the way, and we will not shy away from hard work, nor will we be deterred by adversity, as Coach Rivera and I discussed. All of our energy for the remainder of the season will be focused on playing better, more consistent football, and developing our players while intently evaluating the areas in which we need to improve this offseason. Our fans deserve a team that can compete with the NFL's best and win sustainably over the long term. I will not waver from that mission. Thank you to our fans for the ways of yada, yada, yada. We have not done good enough this season, but our resolve for the future is unbreaking. So I can't wait. I really want to hear Magic Johnson tweet too, if he's going to send a statement out and send out a generic tweet like he always does. But yeah, and a lot of people saying that Jack should have been fired. Jack should have been fired last year, or he should have been fired really after that Bears game where that was embarrassing, where DJ Moore went for 200-something yards, and then Justin Fields had a get-right game. We were the get-right team. We really were under Jack Del Rio. We still are. But we really were the get right team. Everybody knows when you play against a Jack Del Rio defense, you can come in and cook and get right. You can always get right. In mobile quarterbacks, Jack Del Rio cannot defend a mobile quarterback to save his life. Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Josh Allen, anybody that can move that is mobile, he struggles against them for sure. So we'll probably see Jack Del Rio back on ESPN. He was on ESPN before he started, so we'll probably see him back on ESPN with Rex Ryan and guys like that. So we'll definitely see Jack Del Rio back on there for sure. But yeah, it was time for him to go. Really should have been fired after the Bears game. But yeah, it was time for him. And we never forced turnovers in his defense either. It just never really created turnovers at all, or really wreaked havoc or confused anybody at all. I do want to see if I can find a quote from Isaiah Hodgins from last week, just saying how terrible our defense was, or just how easy. Oh yeah, he said, Giants wide receiver Isaiah Hodgins of Weather Commanders adjusted to New York Giants' quick passing game. Isaiah Hodgins said, not really. Their main plan seemed to be that they wanted to play man and then let their D-line do what they do. They had some success with the sacks and stuff, but playing man in the NFL for an entire game isn't easy. And we got guys who can make plays, so we started doing that, and I didn't really notice a counter. They stuck with their plan. So, and you can see the middle of the field was wide open. Like, they just left it wide open. They showed it. Like, Tony Romo talked about it. I can't say Tony Romo when he broadcast because he's so biased towards the Cowboys. But you can just see it. He was leaving guys out there to drive one-on-one. They were getting cooked. Like, Kevontae Turpin had that wide-open touchdown, too. And you can clearly see the same thing with Brandon Cooks getting that wide-open touchdown, too. So, yeah, it was time. But it really, honestly, this doesn't faze me much because I still want Ron to be fired. Eric Bieniemy has not done well either. And I have another nugget. This is from John Keim. He said this on his podcast. I did not listen to the podcast. Somebody tweeted this out that John Keim mentioned there are players, quote, there are players that wish Ron Rivera would take back some of the power given to Eric Bieniemy. So remember, Eric Bieniemy is the associate coach. So we already had the statement from before the season started that guys were concerned with how hard Eric Bieniemy was pushing the guys. So I think some of Terry's regression, I'm not going to say regression, but some of him not playing well, honestly, I'm not going to just blame Eric Bieniemy, but I think there's a rift there. Jahan Dotson has regressed under Eric Bieniemy, so there's definitely been some regression for sure. His 4th and 1 calls yesterday were awful. The 3rd and 1 call was terrible. He dropped Sam back so many times, it's just ridiculous. He can't really get a run game going, too many gun runs. And he just doesn't feed Terry, man. And Terry needs to play better for sure. But honestly, Scott Turner got the ball to Terry more than what we're seeing here, honestly. That's just how it feels. And Jahan Dotson played better last year under Scott Turner. And that's terrible to say. You know, it really is. Scott Turner's awful. And so at times, Scott Turner looks a little bit better than Eric Bieniemy. At times. Not overall, but at times. And B-Rob, honestly, ran the ball better under Scott Turner. When we had that little winning streak, we beat the Eagles, and we beat a couple teams last year, and we went on a run and whatnot. Like, we had the run game was looking better under what Scott Turner was calling. Eric Bieniemy he hasn't really been able to get a consistent run game going under this team. He really wants to drop Sam back a lot and screen game, quick passes, all kinds of stuff like that. So Eric Bieniemy certainly has been a disappointment. Another Andy Reid guy, bringing a guy from Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb. Now Eric Bieniemy, Alex Smith didn't work. Alex Smith wasn't bad, but he just didn't work because of the injury. But anytime we make a trade with Andy Reid for the most part, or bring somebody in under the Andy Reid tree, it just does not work out. It does not work out. So, yeah, guys are fed up with Bieniemy. Bieniemy and Jack Del Rio had a dust up and a scuffle yesterday, and now Jack Del Rio finally gets the dust up out of here. So he gets dusted up out of DC for sure. So, but like I said, we're gonna see him on ESPN. You guys, let me know what you guys think. You guys enjoy your Black Friday. Enjoy the rest of your week as well. You guys, let me know what you guys think about this. This is long overdue. Not really a surprise. But I hope Ron Rivera's next. And we play the Dolphins next week. We play the Dolphins, which is going to be a slaughterhouse. They definitely can put up 70 on this defense. All right, guys. Hello, Commanders. Peace.